Despite a lockdown alert, Buffalo police have confirmed that there was no person with a firearm on site here today. The Erie County executive sending out an alert earlier today asking the community to avoid the area around ECC between North Division Street and Swan Street, as well as Washington and Elm Streets. There was a large presence of Erie County Sheriff's vehicles as well as Buffalo police. Around 11 this morning, we witnessed a SWAT team head into the building here on Ellicott Street. One student tells me by the time he left the building, he saw more than a dozen officers on several floors, and one professor says he was in class when he got an emergency alert to go into lockdown.
And all of a sudden there's 15, 20 cop cars out here. I'm like, I wonder what's going on. And one of my students received an email saying that there was a dangerous situation to lock down the rooms. Thankfully, ECC trains us well, so I pushed the table at least against the door to kind of, keep myself and my students safe. And then about 10 minutes later or so, we heard cops in the hallway, and then they tried opening the door, and I opened the door for them, and they had military-grade weapons and wondering what's going on.
Again, Buffalo police releasing a statement that reads in part, out of an abundance of caution, Buffalo police officers, SWAT, and the K-9 unit were assisted by the Erie County Sheriff's Office and NFTA police in securing the facility and confirming that there is no person with a firearm on site. At this time, there is nothing to indicate this was a legitimate gun call. Buffalo police continue to investigate. And despite the fact that there was no firearm on site, several faculty and students we spoke with say they are shook up after this experience. On your side in Buffalo, Chelsea Swift, Channel 2 News.
Niagara Amusement Park and Splash World will not open its gates this summer. In a statement to guests, the park's operators say the decision comes after years of effort to revive the property, ultimately calling continued operation unsustainable.
It's certainly sad. They're a great employer.
Town Supervisor Peter Marston telling us the closure leaves a big gap on Grand Island, especially for seasonal workers.
Most of the kids I went to high school with on Grand Island worked at Fantasy Island. Kids nowadays work at Fantasy Island, so they're a good employer.
Beyond jobs, town leaders say the park plays a key role in driving tourism.
So it brings a lot of tourism to Grand Island that we probably wouldn't normally see. And people stop for a pizza, people stop here, people stop there. There's a very, very large trickle down from them.
As for what happens next, the future of the property remains unclear.
So honestly, I don't really know. It is in our town center, and there are other viable uses for the property. I can't, off the top of my head, envision something that would serve us better than the amusement park there.
Town officials say any next steps will depend on private developers, but there's already some early interest.
I've heard unofficially that there are some other groups looking at the property. No discussion of use or what their intentions were, but I'm just hopeful that it comes back to life.
Park officials say refunds for 2026 season pass holders will be issued over the next 30 days. And they still plan to continue the 4th of July fireworks tradition on the property. On your side, Lauren Hall, Channel 2 News.
The diocese wants parishes to contribute to part of its $150 million bankruptcy settlement tied to hundreds of clergy sex abuse claims. And now we know these 8 churches in Western New York will not have to contribute to that settlement following a ruling from the Vatican. Ascension in Batavia, St. Timothy in Tonawanda, Blessed Sacrament in Tonawanda, Infant of Prague in Cheektowaga, St. John the 23rd in West Seneca, St. John the Evangelist in Olean, St. Aloysius Gonzaga in Cheektowaga, and St. Bridget in Bergen. In a statement, the diocese told us in part, quote, "These decisions in no way affect the settlement plan, nor the diocese's commitment to fulfilling the terms it has pledged to bring about a sense of closure and restitution to the many victim survivors of sexual abuse." The group, Save Our Churches, says they're still waiting to hear about more parishes.
In the last 2 weeks, we've received 8 absolutely wonderful good news that they are revoking the plan that the bishop put out for just those 8 churches. So we still have more than 13 outstanding waiting for their decisions. The cool thing is this may extend to all the parishes in Buffalo, depending on how Judge Buckeye may take this information into consideration as he's looking at the rest of the money that is in the settlement fund.
You can read the full statement from the diocese online. On your side, Kelly Dudzik, Channel 2 News.
The vacant Buffalo Grand Hotel, which is still boarded up, is still a passion of sorts for Hamilton, Ontario developer Harry Stinson, who bought it back in 2017 and who has experienced setbacks like COVID and major damage from the still unsolved December 2021 arson. Stinson still faces building code and tax issues, and even after an insurance settlement, realizes it'll take many, many millions of dollars of restoration work. What would you say to people who do still have concerns and doubts?
I'm here. We're here. We're going to see this through.
So Stinson says he was hopeful when there was contact with a potential investor group fronted by former Buffalo, now Tampa, Florida resident Perry Davis, with a series of discussions in recent days and even a property tour yesterday, up against a 90-day city deadline seeking financing progress for the project. But something went wrong as of last night with Davis and his associates in what they said was a rather rushed process for a partnership proposal.
We just we couldn't agree. This was not a slight twist to the agreement. It wasn't a fine-tuning. It was a dramatic change to it. And we just weren't prepared to come to an agreement on it.
Unfortunately, for us, at this point, we have no negotiations on the table, so we can't do anything. Like I said, I'm not going to throw anyone under the bus for whatever happened. If there was some kind of a deadline and they had to do whatever they had to do, that's their business.
Stinson, who feels he has a better relationship with the Ryan administration after past city threats of action against the property, sees himself as a victim of sorts with a somewhat unfair bad image, even as he deals with a New York City-based lending institution.
I think City Hall has been very fair. But to be fair also to us, having this sort of news story out there consistently that the city's going to take the hotel hasn't helped with the negotiations with lenders. We continue to own the hotel, notwithstanding, and we continue to persist with it, and the discussions we'd had with other lenders are continuing as well.
Normally, a commuter tax is targeted towards certain employers, including those self-employed who do business with a municipality. But is there an appetite for a commuter tax in Buffalo as the city tries to correct its financial shortfall? It came up as lawmakers were discussing how Buffalo police plan to charge how special events are billed.
Are we being short-sighted talking about the event and maybe a commuter tax? I know it was talked about before. Some people might poo-poo on it, but hey, if you come in the city and our police and fire have to protect you, maybe we look at that, because then that gives us more bang for our buck, and then we can distribute that money for those types of things.
University District Councilman Rashid Wyatt thinks there could be interest in the idea.
You know, why isn't it something that we should be able to charge? You're using our roads, you know, all those things go into play that we could benefit from if we had something like that in place.
But how would the city do it and collect it for special events?
I just don't know how you charge for people coming in to go to a show or coming in to, unless it's added to the price of the ticket.
Right.
It's not a new idea. It's been floated before.
The Savers, Kleinhans, the zoo, and there's always pushback on it, but I always thought that was more fair to have a $1 user fee rather than making everybody. I mean, I go through my neighborhood, and I'm sure that there's not a lot of people that are going to Sabres games on a regular basis. And I'd much rather see the people that use the events pay for it than the people in my district.
The issue landed in court about a decade ago. It went nowhere. On your side in Buffalo, Claudine Ewing, Channel 2 News.
Here at the Double Apple grocery store on Bailey Avenue, where a dozen eggs will still only cost you 69 cents, there is big concern that Mayor Ryan's budget and property tax levy increase could have a big impact on independent businesses like this one. Double Apple Foods opened on Bailey Ave back in 2024, and so far,
business has been great. I mean, we offering really affordable prices for the neighborhood, so the business is doing pretty good.
Tony Ahmed is the owner of Double Apple. It's not a chain or a franchise. He's 100% independent and is providing a critical resource in a part of Buffalo that faces limited fresh food availability. He's not a grocery conglomerate, so in terms of profits,
We're not a franchise, and sort of this size, margin is really, really thin.
and the cost of doing business is rising.
We have other challenges that we have to face, from rising of fuel, diesel for transportation. All vendors, they normally add that on our cost. And then we have to worry about also energy prices rising and employment. Cost is actually rising, everything is rising.
And now he finds himself facing another potential challenge, the impacts of something out of his control completely. Mayor Ryan's budget proposal. According to Tony, the mayor's plan for a 25% property tax levy increase has put expansion plans on hold for now because his landlord has already indicated his rents will be increasing.
They already reached out to me, and inform me of the situation. And as soon as they get their bill, they're going to pass it on to me because the rental actually included the property tax on it.
According to the mayor's property tax levy calculator, Double Apple would see an increase of a little more than $1,600 annually. However, as Tony tells me, it's just enough to cause a ripple effect that could greatly impact his business and other independent businesses as well.
We get customers actually from Niagara Falls all the way to Jamestown and the surrounding area, and for our affordable pricing. But if this is continue, I'm afraid that we probably have to do something about it in order to stay in business.
The biggest issues right now for Tony and his store are the rising costs across the board, which have nothing to do with the budget proposal. But what he fears is the increased property tax levy and the costs associated with that will cause just enough strain where significant business decisions will need to be made.
This kind of increase is really going to affect the businesses, and eventually it's going to affect the resident of the city. Pretty much that kind of increase is going to have to be applied to the prices.
The Buffalo Common Council has until May 26th to either amend Mayor Ryan's budget proposal or pass it altogether. On your side in Buffalo, Nate Benson, Channel 2 News.
To get those fans safely to the KeyBank Arena, 12 downtown traffic control points for Buffalo police officers or other officers stationed outside the arena.
It was approximately $27,000 for security for just the Buffalo Police last night.
It really adds up for the cost-starved city, especially overtime in the Buffalo Police Union contract with all factors figured in.
If an officer is called in on overtime, we have a 4-hour minimum. The real cost is about $114 per hour.
So now factor in all the various other city events with crowds like the NCAA Tourney Weekend, concerts, festivals, parades, marathons. And in Buffalo, police overtime alone, the city shelling out $868,000 so far in the fiscal year running through June. A situation for City Council and the Ryan administration to consider with a police budget and a new incoming commissioner to eventually deal with it. So this warning going out last night with a potential police services fee increase to be determined by city leaders through the city charter.
We are looking to work with the council. We are looking to also work with the community members and create a fair payment plan. And again, we're trying to give people as much notice as possible. That is essentially a normal event for us. It's a 5K run. There is a $2,700 bill essentially that is accrued by the city to be able to secure this event. The bill to the promoter is $812, right? So when you look at the duration of the summer or the duration of the year or the fiscal year, you can see how we end up very quickly running up a big bill.
And again, about those Sabres games, we've been told the Pagulas pay extra for police services for Rochester Americans hockey games and other events out there at their arena, but not currently here in Buffalo.
The folks at City Hall will be working with everybody for contractual stuff for that.
The first thing that we think is speed. Obviously, speed is the primary factor.
Speed. The one word that came to mind for Truck Driving School Executive Director Andrew Strait and State Trooper James O'Callahan when they saw these images, a semi-truck overturned on the Buffalo Skyway.
It's why we teach the way we teach, and we do everything in the vehicle instruction, because it's that important that you need to know how heavy your vehicle is, how big your vehicle is, what it's going to do during different curves, turns, etc.
Trooper O'Callahan says heavy cargo likely contributed to this dramatic crash.
The truck was going too fast for that sharp of a curve. The truck was fully loaded with spray and installation, kind of like bales of it in the back. So due to the speed, due to the curve and the weight of the truck, it actually overturned on the ramp.
The driver able to walk away mostly unscathed, his only complaint being a sore hand.
A miracle, if you will. If you saw the pictures, it is like a holy wow, like how did that guy live from that?
Though he's also walking away with a few citations too.
We issued a ticket for speed, which is the primary factor. We also issued a ticket for his license. He was driving out of class.
The driver from Georgia was operating without a commercial driver's license, or CDL.
He was downgraded from a CDL license to a D license. Could be for any number of reasons, but for whatever reason, he was downgraded and shouldn't be operating that vehicle anymore.
So what happens next for this driver? Well, Straight says there may be a way back on the road.
So I'm not sure how the DMV or the courts or anything will treat this, but yeah, it is something you can get back. If you do get downgraded, you can get it back, yes.
Governor Kathy Hochul says car insurance fraud often takes the form of staged accidents or criminals taking advantage of loopholes in the claims process.
So there's two sides of the equation. One is I want to make sure that some of the drivers of why we have such high insurance premiums in the state are addressed. That's what you've been hearing about, but also the insurance companies are taking a close look at their practices as well.
An insurance expert from AAA says he believes the governor's proposal to address fraud will help lower the costs for drivers in New York State.
As the claims go down, the insurance rate should eventually go down along with it. This is not a short-term quick fix that's going to happen. This is going to be a long-term change that the governor is trying to put through.
One City of Buffalo resident says this month she found out her insurance rate will be going up about $30 a month. She says she has the same car, same address, and has not been in an accident, adding she's hoping her family will soon see some relief.
I want to believe that it'll happen, but this is New York State. I've lived here my whole life. I've seen things be proposed for years, and it's still not done. There's a lot, I could go on and on about different, so I'm hopeful, but guarded, because I'll believe it when I see it.
He'd be the first to tell you this wasn't the crime of the century. It was just one which needed to be solved.
Imagine if it was a family member of my own or a family member of yours. Anybody would want that case solved.
In Leroy was a woman with dementia and unable to speak, living in a nursing home and wearing a treasured ring given to her by her husband until it turned up missing in November. The family contacted police, who assigned the case to Detective Caden Vangalio.
So the first thing to do was start interviewing the people that were working that night.
Among the staff, he noted there was a temporary worker who left just after the theft and never returned, and their efforts to locate her proved unsuccessful.
So there's an online database
where pawn shops are supposed to report transactions
that I could then search to see if she pawned any items.
He kept checking for months,
and I didn't have any leads come up.
But this detective, who grew up in this town along the banks of Owatka Creek, wasn't going to let this be water over the dam. Knowing the suspect lived in Buffalo, he decided to drive to the Queen City and visit as many pawn shops as he could.
And then if I would go to one and they would tell me that they didn't have it, they would give me 3 more suggestions.
He visited 7 in a single day before coming here to this one on Seneca Street.
I went in there, asked if an individual by the name of Erica Clark had pawned any items. They searched her name and they said, yes, a gold ring had been sold to them the day after the ring had come up missing.
Clark is now charged with felony counts of grand larceny and endangering the welfare of a physically disabled person. The ring has been returned.
It feels good to be able to help them. The family's super appreciative.
In fact, as we were chatting,
Detective Vangalio,
they called again to say thank you.
And of course, and like I said, if there's anything else you guys need moving forward, just let me know.
Like he said, this wasn't the crime of the century. It was just one which needed to be solved. On your side in Leroy, Genesee County, Dave McKinley, Channel 2 News.
SUNY Erie administrative workers were on the picket line this morning from 7 to 10, asking for fair wages and to return to the bargaining table. These administrative workers do work like financial aid or student services, anything of that sort here at SUNY Erie. And they're saying that they have not been bargaining in good faith with the college. Union leaders have pointed to wages starting at just over $18 an hour for college-educated employees, along with what they call inadequate retiree health benefits. The union says the college has built up a financial surplus while negotiations have stalled.
So we've been at the bargaining table for quite a while now, and we just feel as though it is time for us to come to a conclusion and that our workers deserve, equal everything for their hard work.
Again, today's picket ran from 7 to 10 on the corner of Main Street and South Youngs Road as workers push for a new contract and what they call fair pay and benefits. Union leaders say they're hoping today's picket puts pressure on college leadership to do something to return to the bargaining table and to start getting them into a better contract. On your side in Williamsville, Natalie Foss, Channel 2 News.
A few weeks after the vandalism at the new Highmark Stadium, Two on Your Side filed a Freedom of Information Law request seeking any communications between the Bills, construction firm Gilbane Turner, and the Erie County Stadium Corporation about the vandalism that was first reported on Monday, February 16th. 30 pages of emails between the Bills and the Erie County Stadium Corporation were released to us, and there are two big takeaways. The first, cleanup of the vandalism started before the Erie County Sheriff's Office even began to investigate. And the second, state officials struggled to get basic information about the vandalism. Government partners were first notified via email about the vandalism just before 6 p.m. on Monday, February 16th. The Bills' new stadium project program director, Joseph Byrne, sent an email that says in part, quote, "The Buffalo Bills' new stadium project will be closed until further notice due to a recent very large rash of untasteful and hateful graffiti and also vandalism to finished work throughout the project." Later that night, records show that media outlets started sending inquiries to the Bills and state about rumors of the site being shut down. A statement was eventually released by Gilbane Turner that night. The next day, Tuesday the 17th, state officials asked the Bills for some basic information, saying that while they were providing no comment at that time, they may need to eventually chime in. The state wanted to know what the vandalism was, a total dollar amount, whether or not it was a criminal matter, if law enforcement was involved, and so on. Buffalo Bills Director of Corporate and Stadium Communications Todd Starowitz acknowledged the request and was looking into it. This is where things take a turn. On Thursday the 19th, Erie County Stadium Development President Steve Rinaldi sends a very firm email to the Bills saying in part, quote, "Our monthly check-in yesterday was extremely disappointing. We received no overall account of what happened at the stadium, how things stand presently, and or what next steps are anticipated." Rinaldi continued saying, quote, "No one from the Bills could answer any question we had regarding the shutdown." He then outlined 16 different questions and again asked the Bills for specific answers. The Bills did not acknowledge that request until the next day, February 20th, which was the same day construction resumed at the site. One of the questions the state wanted to know was, did the Erie County Sheriff's Office see all the vandalism, or has some of it been cleaned up prior to their investigation? The Bills replied saying, quote, "We believe some vandalism was cleared prior to the investigation. When Gilbane Turner investigated further, it realized it was more widespread and contacted the Erie County Sheriff." Another question the state wanted to clarify was when specifically was the Erie County Sheriff's Office contacted about the vandalism? The bill said Monday, February 16th. The state continued to seek information from the Bills over the weekend, but the last email sent by the organization was sent to the state Monday, February 23rd, again just acknowledging that they were working on securing answers. The final email sent by the state was on Wednesday, February 25th, with a firm deadline for the Bills to provide incident reports and answers to their questions by the end of the day. According to the records we've obtained, that does not appear to have happened.